back to another EDH deck tech. Really excited today, my continuation into Mono Black. I was really excited when this card was previewed, Gisa Glorious Resurrector. I'm a big fan of the previous Gisa card. So really excited. This one has taken me a really long time to kind of tweak and play and really get a handle on the deck and also make it at a comfortable level that, you know, I won't have my opponents moan and groan. Kind of when I saw it, I was like, okay, is this the kind of Tergrid deck that we can actually play? Like, people would actually be okay to play against? And it definitely has some mixed reactions. I think a lot of people, you know, will obviously know what's happening. You know, their creatures are going to die, and that's the point of the deck. But, you know, it is quite weak, I guess. Like, it has to wait until the next upkeep for it to trigger. So there is a bit of time where Tergrid kind of gets that value straight away, usually. So it's a bit harder to interact with unless you have something right then and there in preparation. But for Gisa, you know, your opponents get their turn before you start, you know, bringing things back. So I've had a bit of mixture, kind of, you know, with my opponents and how they feel about playing against this kind of deck. But it has been a lot of fun. It's very black on theme, destroying creatures. That's all it's doing. I've never had a deck that's had this much removal. You know, the kind of templates of, you know, 10 removal, so many board wides, whatever. This one really just broke that. It's like, oh, no, I want to pack out removal. You know, Spellslinger decks have so many instants and sorcery. This has just so many things that just want to destroy creatures. If you are in a meta where, you know, it's not heavily creature based, this deck is really going to struggle because it doesn't do anything else. It really doesn't. But if you like interacting with people's creatures, like I do, then you'll definitely find it fun. So we'll go through the deck. I guess first, just want to say that those creatures will come back with Decayed. Decayed being, I guess, still a new mechanic. So it's very interesting. So it's got some grave hate on it, which is nice. It's always good to have some grave hate. And then your opponents just get those creatures back into their graveyard eventually, after you're kind of done with it. So it's a lot of fun getting people's creatures and the game changing because all your opponents have all different kinds of creatures and how you can kind of best benefit from that. Okay, so we'll go through the deck. So Gisa. Alright, so first up, Slaughter Pact. Never play with Slaughter Pact really in any deck. I find that the non-black creature clause just doesn't hit enough. But like I said, you know, we're packing with removal. It's nice to have the 0 mana one, only because your opponents think that, okay, they have another turn if you play Gisa out where, you know, you might be tapped out, so you can't really do much yet. So then they have another turn where their creatures, and then another turn where their creatures, you know, eventually come back to my side. So they get a bit of a reprieve, but if you have Slaughter Pact, you know, you can go straight into it. So, you know, start that ball rolling. So targeted removal. Tragic Slip, another targeted removal. Creatures will be dying all the time, so this is quite nice. It hits obviously indestructible, great. Defile, another one. We play plenty of swamps, so, you know, just pretty much 1 mana. Another one where sometimes I'll ramp a little bit early and they just have that little 1 excess mana, which has been great to have something like this. Feed the Swarm, targeted, it hits enchantments. Not really relevant for Gisa, but it's good to have that flexibility. Infernal Grasp, probably one of the best of this kind of 2 mana destroy target creature effects. There are some that, you know, are non-black or have some strange little claws on it. So it's nice where this one's just, you know, lose a bit of life, which we don't really care about. Malicious Affliction. I can never say this card. Malicious Affliction has Morbid, which is great. So you can copy, so you can hit 2. Another one that hits the non-blacks, but you know, it's just nice, cheap, and efficient. Instant speed. Hagra Mauling, it's a land on the other side, so you know, you don't really want to pay 4 mana for an effect like this, but having the land on the other side just allows it, you know, that kind of extra flexibility. And then Ravenous Chupacabra, a nice one where it can come in, it can serve as a blocker, it can be reanimated, things like that. It's quite nice. Okay, so those are all the targeted removals. Now we come into a lot of sacrifice effects. So another of, I guess, destroying your opponent's creatures is forcing them to sacrifice. I love forcing my opponents to sacrifice creatures. I think it's one of the best ways to deal with people's creatures. So having these effects like Fleshbag Marauder, where it comes in and just everyone has to sack a creature, you know, it's group hug, everyone has to do it. You know, you'll normally just sack this. But the good thing is with Gisa is that you may get some of your opponent's creatures, so you can sack them. Once you're kind of done with them, you can sack them. Obviously, this would have to be pre-main because Decayed will mean they'll sacrifice at the end of combat. But, you know, once you know you're done with their creature, they might have an enter the battlefield effect that you're done with, and then just sacrifice it away. So we do play all of these kind of effects. So Demon's Disciples, another one. This one does hit Planeswalkers. Again, not really too relevant for Gisa's effect, but it is nice to have that versatility. Merciless Executioner. Again, sacrifice, and then Planescrafter, probably the best one of this, where if they cannot do any of that, they discard a card. So quite nice. Okay, and then Rankle, one of my favorite cards. Another one where it's forcing my opponents to sacrifice. The good thing is, you know, this is each combat. Now, this trigger will happen before the end of combat because this happens at dealing combat damage. So if you have something that's going to be sacrificed because of Decay, you could just sacrifice that away. So I absolutely love this card. Up next is my opponent sacrificing, so that we've got quite a few effects of my opponent sacrificing. Liliana's Triumph. There's quite a few kind of effects like this where it's just each opponent sacrifices a creature. I do have one Liliana Planeswalker, and I do kind of love this card, so I've got it in, but you could literally put in Innocent Blood or whatever effect that you feel is appropriate here. You know, once you hit so many, you know, removal spells, you start to get into some of the other ones that have, you know, a bit of a random clause on it. But I do have a Liliana Planeswalker in here, and I just love this card, so it's in. Okay, Virtus's Maneuver. Another one, so we're starting to get into where it's costing a bit more, so that 3 mana. So you name everyone as foe, so they're all going to sack a creature. So it's starting to get a bit more expensive when it's starting to get 3 and up, only because, you know, your opponents get to choose what they sack. So you probably don't get the best thing, but because we have so much removal, we're, you know, kind of whittling down our opponent's board so that we are then essentially targeting their stronger creatures. So here, but with this one, you know, you can also get something back to your hand, one of your like Merciless Executioners and things like that. So it's quite nice. Soul Shatter to hit their biggest things, which is great, so that, you know, they're not sacking a token, because we obviously need to get creature cards. So it's nice to you know, try to get something bigger. And then Vona's Hunger. So Vona's Hunger is great because so it's instant, which is nice. Each opponent's going to sacrifice a creature. That's okay. We're kind of playing that effect at 3 mana anyway. But it does have a send where they're going to suck half of their creatures rounded up. So, you know, you're going to get more than one, hopefully. And then, you know, across multiple opponents, it's going to be quite a lot. It's instant speed, so you can do it at the end of the opponent at previous, and then hopefully get your Gisa trigger straight up, which is nice. Okay, Anowon the Rune Sage. So these upkeep trigger effects are great because you will play this. Each opponent will go around sacking a creature, and then on your turn, you can stack your triggers so that you'll get your decayed creatures first. They'll come, and if it's a creature with an enter battlefield, you don't need it anymore. You'll just sacrifice that. I mean, assuming that they're not a vampire, obviously. So these kind of effects are really, really premium, where you just go around the table and then you can stack your triggers. Archfiend of Despair, so very similar, but your opponents get to keep essentially their two best, but you'll get everything else, which is quite nice. Call to the Grave, another one, but just for zombies. If there are no creatures, then it does sacrifice. So after a board wipe, it can be a bit challenging to keep it on, but it's okay, I guess. And then Shieldred, the Whispering one, great. It'll get our creatures back, which is what we want as well as getting all of our opponents. Okay, so our creatures are dying, so we want to cause then our opponent's creatures to die, which will then cause those creatures to come under our control at our turn. So it just comes full circle. So we've got Grave Pact, which is great, and Dictator of Erebos is also nice. This one's nice. It has flash, so your opponents think that they're safe, but they're not. And then Butcher of Malakir. So we do kind of have all of these effects in place, ready to go. And then just one board wipe. I found that I had so much targeted removal that board wipes were a bit superfluous, so I didn't really need them too much. But in Garrick's Wage, it's really nice because it is planeswalkers and creatures that we control, so we will control the decayed creatures essentially, so they're not going to destroy them, so that's quite nice. Okay, some sacrifice. So the decayed creatures will die obviously from their own decay, but we want to try to capitalize on some of that value. So there are a few sack outlets in this deck. One being Priest of Forgotten Gods. This one I don't usually play in a lot of my decks, but it's nice because we will hopefully get more than one decayed creature. So this is quite nice because then I can fulfill that sacrifice 2 creatures, and it's going to force my opponents to sacrifice, which then full circle comes back. And I get those creatures, so this is great. And there's also any number of target opponents, so you do have to target them, but you can choose everyone, so it's essentially each opponent unless they're untargetable. Serious here, great. Get that Scry one. Phyrexian Altar, another great one. Free, it's going to give me some mana, which is quite nice. Once you're done with those decayed creatures, just turn them into mana. Ashnod's Altar, another one, great. And Yawgmoth's Transposition. I really went for one sack outlets that didn't cost anything, and this one's going to sacrifice and then draw me a card. This is probably one of the best sack outlets that you can have. Okay, so a few payoffs. So other than the randomness of getting people's creatures, I do have a few payoffs for their sacrifice, I guess. So Blood Artist, great one. Zulaport Gutthroat, another one that this just hits everyone. And then Bastion of Remembrance as well. It is an enchantment version, so it's a bit harder to deal with. You can play, Vindictive Vampires and things like that, but they were starting to get more expensive on this, so I felt like just a few payoffs was quite nice. So some reanimation. So we're hitting people's graveyards. They are exiling those creatures, but then they do get them back. So they do go back to the graveyard. They don't exile once I'm done with them. So it's nice to, have a little bit of reanimation package. I wouldn't overload on this. Just the generically good ones are fine. So reanimate, great to get a creature, and animate dead. Also another one, just nice and cheap. And just a bit of an alternative win con. Grey Merchant of Asphodel doesn't really have too much to do with the deck other than, I can have a lot of devotion. So it's nice to have something that can help pad our life totals and start to try and end the game. Once we've kind of done, you know, swinging around with people's decayed creatures. I found the most important thing in this deck is actually protecting Gisa. Like, everything is around Gisa, all the removal is really great, but if they destroy Gisa, or it's destroyed, you have to restart over again because it's going to come in as a new object. So you do need a bit of protection. Now, Malakir Rebirth, so Gisa, if they say target Gisa, and I target Gisa with this, Gisa will die and then come back, which is great. You know, I don't want to pay that mana again, but any creature obviously exiled with the previous Gisa will now remain in exile, so that's nice. It's kind of keeps them in exile, but you know, and then you have to kind of set up those creatures again. So it's not ideal, but you know, this is so flexible to land on the other side. And there was one time where, like, you know, I can convince someone to, like, hey, you know, your creature's going to be exiled. It didn't end up working, but you can have that kind of politics. Someone might actually not want their creature to stay in exile. So it didn't work in the one occasion where this came up for me, but it might for you. Okay, Dark Privilege. This one's a nice one. So this one does regenerate. So sacrifice creature to regenerate a creature. So you put this on your Gisa. So regenerate doesn't mean that Gisa leaves. So it will still be the same object. So that's great. So things that die under Gisa will come back to, you know, to its effect, which is great. And, you know, it's a sack outlet as well. So nice to have that in place. Lightning Greaves, just generically great. I'm not usually targeting my commander, so Shroud's fine. Swiftfoot Boots also follows. Gift of Doom. This one's been a fun one. It's one that's like, you know, no one actually thinks that, you know, you're playing this kind of card. So it itself is a sack outlet, which is great. And Indestructible is really, really ideal. For Gisa, if I had some more budget, I'd probably try to fill out some more indestructible equipment and things like that, just to give Gisa the extra added, because rather than you know, Malakir Rebirth and things like that, it's just you give it indestructible, try to not have it targetable, and then, you know, Gisa is really going to stay on the board outside of, you know, some mass exile or something like that. So this has been quite nice. I think I would want to be maxing out on some of this effect for my protection. Okay, draw, sorry. So just generic good draw. You still need some draw spells in this, obviously, because you're doing a lot of 1-for-1ing. So having some efficient draw is great. Knight's Whisper. Plumb the Forbidden has been another nice one, where it's a sack outlet itself. Sometimes I've had to just kind of cycle this. You don't have to have something to sack. I've just cycled it, but when you do have something to sack, when you have those decayed creatures, this is instant speed, so it can be done in response to them sacking. So really, really nice. Sign in Blood, just, you know, generically good. So great. Skull Clamp, you know, the creatures are going to die to their decay triggers, so, you know, they don't have to be 1 toughness because they're going to die to their decay trigger. So really, really nice. Village Rites, another one where it's a sack outlet. You know, they're going to die anyway, so draw 2 cards off them. Deadly Dispute, I've loved this one, even better than Village Rites. You know, it gives me that little ramp as well, which is really nice. So get the 2 cards. Phyrexian Arena, you know, I put this in a lot of my black decks. This is something that you probably don't need to have. It's way overcosted, but, you know, just having that continuous draw is nice. Adds a little devotion, which is also good, but, you know, you could put like Read the Bones and be quite happy with this. Dark Prophecy, so I've got creatures dying all the time, so there's plenty of draw getting hit off this. The 3 black pips is not really something to be scared of. So then Grim Horospex and I guess Midnight Reaper, they're all both very similar, where it's Grim Horospex has the morph, but essentially whenever a creature dies, a non-token creature, you're going to draw a card and lose a life. So those decayed creatures are they're not tokens, so you know you're going to be fine with this. So it's quite good. And then just I did, preface with a Liliana Planeswalker. So it is the best one, which is great. So Liliana Dreadhorde General, whenever a creature dies, we're going to draw a card. That's exactly what we want. We want to be creating blockers as well, which is really good because people are going to swing out at you because your decayed creatures cannot block. So this is quite nice. It also causes some removal because it's going to cause your opponents to sacrifice their creatures, so it just does everything that we want. So really good. Okay, tutors, Vampiric Tutor, just really nice. You're gonna start to want to get those either your ramp packages in or start getting those continuous upkeep removals, so you don't have to invest a lot of mana. Expedition map goes get some of our valuable lands. This is a very similar tutor package to a lot of my decks. Diabolic Intent, we've got plenty of creatures to sacrifice without Decayed. This is sorcery, so it has to be your first main if you're going to be attacking with your decayed creatures, but we got plenty to sack. And then Demonic Tutor, generically good. Dark Ritual, so a ramp, just really efficient. Soul Ring, really good. Arcane Signet, also really good. Jet Medallion, lots of black in this deck, so reducing it. There's a lot of 2 and 2 black kind of effects, so it's nice to get that cheaper. Mind Stone gets a bit of draw later. Thought Vessel, just a really here just as a 2-mana rock. You don't really usually have a hand size that large, except for my one game where I got a Consecrated Sphinx. But other than that, not usually. Cryptghast, just to double your mana. This one's nice and cheap. You could also play like Nakana Revenant. I found this just a little bit too expensive. I want to kind of get Gisa going and then just removing using my removal spells. So 4 mana is a great cost for that effect. Pitiless Plunderer, I'm going to be sacking a lot of creatures that I control, so getting that treasure is really great. Okay, lands. This is usually a generically built land mana base that I usually have for my black decks. So Ancient Tomb, just really great to get that extra mana. Bajuka Bog hits people's graveyards. I note that Gisa has that graveyard hate, but that's not always going to be the case, and it's nice to have another backup. Cabal Coffers, we play a lot of swamps, and we also play Urborg, so it's nice to get that into play. Cabal Stronghold, again, we do play a lot of basics, so it's okay. Myriad Landscape, this one I've been really enjoying more and more, even in my mono black decks, especially when it's like 4+ commander, where I can get this down on turn 1 or 2, and then have a little bit extra mana, hopefully by turn 3-4, where I can play Gisa and play a removal spell at the same time. So it's nice to have that into play. Nyx Shrine to Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, really good. I have a lot of devotion. Phyrexian Tower, another sack outlet, which is really great, as well as it's going to give you some mana. Strip Mine, I always play a land destruction land in my deck. I've even seen some people playing more than just the one. I do only just play the one, depending on the budget. This could be a Ghost Quarter, for instance. And then Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, to make everything swamps, even, the advantage of your utility lands becoming swamps. Just turn on your Cabal Coffers, and sometimes you're a bit utility land flooded. And then War Room, mono black, so it's okay. It's pay 1 life and 3 and tap this to draw a card. So just nice. Sometimes you just don't have anything, so it's great to have that on the land. And then the rest is just swamps. The best card in Magic. So yeah, that's my Gisa deck. It's been a lot of fun. You know, I enjoy removing people's creatures. There have been on occasions, you know, some people a bit salty. So you know, you have to make sure that it's you know, people know what's kind of coming. But it does have some weaknesses, so it's a lot more fun to play with than Tergrid. A lot harder to play than Tergrid, because you really have to pick your spots. You either have to really hit hard and try to go for Gisa super early, or hold off and get some protection on board. So it's been quite a mental minefield for that. But I've had a lot of fun with this deck. It really touches a lot of why I like black. So it's nice, and it doesn't get the groans that Tergrid gets. Well, not that has been openly said, I guess, about this one. So excellent. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy this deck as much as I have. I'll see you next time.